Good evening. In honor of passing of Charlie Kirk, I'm going to begin tonight's show with a moment of silence. As most of you are aware, Charlie Kirk was murdered while he was at an event earlier today, shot by a sniper rifle, presumably from the roof of a nearby building, when he was hosting an event, a Prove Me Wrong event, in which, ironically, the shooter clearly was incapable of proving him wrong, and in lieu thereof, decided to assassinate a caring father, husband, religious person who subjected himself to trying to carry out everything he ever understood about the Word of God, and was, by all accounts, every bit the noble individual that his millions of fans believed him to be. I never had the privilege of meeting Charlie Kirk or interacting with him in any way. But like you, he had a profound influence on me as well. And this is a very, very difficult thing to process. It's a very, very difficult thing to comprehend. And I think that, and I hope, first and foremost, I want to express my condolences and prayers for his soul and for his wife and children. My condolences to them. This awful, senseless loss. This awful, senseless, brutal horror for a man who never preached violence, never preached hate, but he never wished ill on anyone, and all he was ever seeking was a better American society, and for that, some lunatic took his life. For those of you who feel a loss, I express my sorrow and condolences. We're all in the same place with this sort of confusion. And one of the things that I plan on talking about a lot tonight is the notion that this is something that feels like a turning point. It feels like it's a turning point for this country. It may turn out that it's not at all. It may turn out that, those of us who feel like it's a turning point are simply feeling an over emotion. It's very possible. But to the extent this is a potential turning point, that turning point could either turn us into something horrible or it can turn us into something, a country that actually starts to heal. And given everything we've all heard Charlie say throughout his life, I'm sure it would be arguably his greatest legacy if, in fact, it helped lead toward the latter rather than the former. He was not someone who was violent. He was not someone who ever preached violence or hate. He was someone who could engage in conversation and skillfully debate with anyone on any political topic and seemingly would just dominate his adversary without ever denigrating them. And that is something that is so lost in our culture today. That is something that benefits society. He was the embodiment of every positive reason to encourage unfettered free speech, just by the way he engaged in free speech. He was the perfect embodiment of free speech, where he gave others a chance to talk, express views that were different from his own, encourage that, and encourage discussion, encourage conversation, encourage feedback and criticism. As a litigator, one of the things I think most kids who grow up dreaming of being a lawyer, they don't picture themselves sitting in some office drafting contracts. They all picture themselves standing in a courtroom, bringing forward an argument that is just so dominant that people buy a mic just to drop it. That's the dream of every kid who, dreams of growing up to be a lawyer. Every kid I've ever heard, whoever wants to be a lawyer, they thought they were really skilled at debate. And I've heard many skilled orators, many skilled debaters. And I'll tell you that Charlie would have held his own with any of them. He was really able to digest. And part of that is part of why he was so great as far as being a representative of phenomenal free speech, in that he would listen. Most of the time when we engage in debate, we're almost tuning out what the other side is saying. And even if we're not cutting them off, waiting our turn to interject and just walk past whatever it is that they were saying and just say, no, you're not hearing my point, and just restating your own point louder or perhaps in a more clever way without actually digesting the argument that the other side is saying. And one of the things that made him so potent as a political debater is that he did listen, and he would listen to the other side's argument and he would debate back. The founder, I just posted right before I came live here that it's ironic that in death, Charlie Kirk perhaps has brought America to a true turning point USA. He, the founder of that organization, which has been so influential and helped change the landscape of this country, and almost certainly is what cost him his life. I think that he was a champion of free speech. He was a champion of Second Amendment rights. We're going to see how some people on the left are trying to use this as an opportunity to, what would be, in my opinion, piss on his corpse before he's even in the ground, by trying to use this as a basis to argue for tighter gun control. That's like basically seeing him dead and suggesting you throw him in a blender. Like, why would you say such a thing about a man who never would have ever had that take about this? So he gets murdered, and then people like have a take like that. It feels repugnant. It feels really ugly. I understand that people have an agenda, but it's a very, very ugly way to try and twist everything about him. What I am going to say is I heard a lot of people on the right basically call for some sort of payback. And I cannot stress this enough. That is no less a perversion of everything that Charlie Kirk stood for than people who try and use his death as a basis to argue for tighter gun control. And that is to say this: if you're one of these people who are saying, that we need to punish them, some sort of collective punishments, I'm not even sure what that even means. Obviously, this person who, I've heard mixed reports as to whether or not he's been caught. Someone was arrested, and then they say that he was not the right guy. So I'm not sure if some of you have reports that can confirm whether or not they've actually apprehended the correct shooter. But what I would say is that we all obviously want to see him prosecuted to the full extent of the law. I'm simply saying, if you're calling for some sort of similar retribution, if that's what your response is to this, then you never heard anything Charlie Kirk actually said, any more than Elizabeth Warren saying that this is a call for stricter, tighter gun control. Neither of you ever heard what he said. You might have listened to him, you just never heard anything he said. Because there is zero chance, and you know it if you think about it, there is zero chance in hell that Charlie Kirk ever would have had that reaction. And he would have been angry at anyone who had that reaction. So if you're sufficiently inspired and outraged by his assassination that you think that there's some sort of action that has to be taken, at the very least, if you have that much respect for the man, then you should have that much respect for his position as to what would be an appropriate response in this moment. And retribution violence is the very last thing I could ever imagine Charlie Kirk calling for in this moment. If that's what you're calling for, perhaps you should consider what would Charlie Kirk, what does his soul sit there thinking if he hears people actually trying to raise that type of banner in his name as part of his legacy? I have very little doubt that his soul is heaven bound. And I think the last thing that he would want is for his soul to be stained with the notion that his assassination would be used as a basis to induce violence. Like I said, that's the same type of thing as throwing his corpse in a blender. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. At the same time, and I was on a space, and I apologize to those of you who follow me on Locals. I normally try to tweet out when I'm on into Locals when I go into a space. I was on a space for a brief bit today, and I was talking with someone who I strongly disagreed with, a friend of mine, someone I consider a friend, someone I've met, one of the few people from online social media world that I've actually met. I met at the inauguration, Diligent Denizen, and he was of the opinion that people who call out, the left as being evil are ratcheting up the violence talk no less than anyone else. And I strongly disagreed with him and stated so in that space, where I said, look, anyone who's ever watched me knows that I have no tolerance for political violence. And I think it's incumbent upon anyone who has a microphone which is being heard by more than 10 people that they routinely tell their audience that this is not a time for political violence. Don't get violent. Don't think that violence is the answer. It just leads to more destruction and more destruction. That is not what is called for in this moment. And I think that that's incumbent upon anyone who has influence on the public in any way, shape, or form. I think it's responsible, and I think it's mature. And I know that the clickbait might tell you to do just the opposite, because I'd get a lot more clicks if I started railing here, calling for blood. I know that. Everyone knows that. That's the easy thing to do. I'd probably be up over a couple 100,000 subs in 2 months if I started pounding that message. And I will never do that. Because that's not trying to help America. That's just looking out for yourself. You're not caring about your viewers. You're not caring about your subscribers. You're not caring about anyone other than yourself when you advocate for that. And I think quite the contrary, that part of being a responsible adult, someone who's actually trying to help society, that if you're influencing people, that's incumbent upon people like me and people whose channels may be significantly larger or significantly smaller than mine, to tell our audiences that no, hell no. Do not engage in violence. Don't promote violence. Do not celebrate violence. And that's a really, really important thing. But the area I disagree with Diligent Denizen on is that I said, I think it's because he was saying that when Elon Musk labeled the left as the party of murder, he thought that was divisive, and he's labeling half the country murderers. I didn't see it that way. I didn't read Elon's tweet that way. And what I said to him was, it's incumbent upon us to continually speak out against violence from our own followers and make sure, no, you don't even start punching people. In fact, you shouldn't be bullying people. You shouldn't be doing anything like that. But to be vigilant in calling out things that are evil, saying this is an evil perspective, this is an evil take, this is wrong. I gave him the example. I said, when I talk about people who are looking to promote what I consider one of the biggest evils. So when they advocate for transing children, Frankensteining them, I think it's essential that we call that out as evil. If you don't call out evil, then you're enabling it to spread. You're implying that it's okay, and it should be identified as being evil. But that's very different from saying that that anyone has justification for engaging in physical harm, even of these doctors or parents or teachers or whatever, who are promoting that type of lunacy. And certainly not the kids themselves or any adult who engage in transing. That's insanity. I said people actually are the ones who are transitioning. Said, if anything, I look at them with pity. I think that their brains have been turned to mush by their environment, and I genuinely feel bad for them. I feel as if they've been preyed upon, much as someone who's physically assaulted as a child by a parent, has been preyed upon by that child, by that parent. This is an assault of the mind, which has damaged them. That's not someone I should be angry at. That's not someone I should be spitting at, or God forbid, thinking of doing harm to, or certainly not bullying them. That's someone you feel bad for. That's someone you try to help, because too many people have been butchering their psyche. And that's what I think is important. I'm not looking to go off into that topic for any more than I already have. I hope to not even having to bother talking about that the rest of the night. But the point that I'm getting at is, with that topic, as with all topics that we're talking about here, whether you're talking about that or illegal border crossings, and the notion that we should bring everyone in here, and how self-destructive that is, we have to be able to freely call that out without being afraid that in so doing we are inciting violence, or we're inciting something wrong. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with calling out evil. There's nothing wrong with doing that, and we should. It's important, because calling out and identifying evil helps prevent further evil from spreading. But at the same time, those people, you might have a channel that's smaller than mine. You might have a channel that's bigger than mine. You're watching right now. I would urge you to continually try and press to make it as much as possible about the argument, not the individual. And perhaps I slip too much in that myself. Certainly, when I'm identifying certain leaders, I'll call them out, and I'll perhaps say too much. I'll express too much of my genuine disgust for particular individuals. And I think that the one lesson I could take from this, which I think would be a way of honoring Charlie Kirk's memory, is, instead of calling out this politician or that political thought person as themselves, as them being the sinner, the evil, or the monster, but to very specifically and articulately identify their position as being monstrous, their position as being twisted, their position as being perverted and evil, rather than they themselves being that. And I think that distinction is important, while at the same time, to explain why it is I think that. And that way, you're opening up an opportunity for them to step away from that position. So no, I don't think that, and I do think that leftist ideology, I think a lot of it is destructive, very destructive. Joe, during hour 2, can we listen to what Trump just said when he spoke about Charlie?
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight, all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. Charlie was the best of America, and the monster who attacked him was attacking our whole country. An assassin tried to silence him with a bullet, but he failed, because together we will ensure that his voice, his message, and his legacy will live on for countless generations to come. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory. May God watch over his family. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
I'm sure many on the left are going to be outraged by his statement. When I pulled this up, I searched for Charlie Kirk and Trump, and I see two of these videos here. This seems to come up a lot. I'm just curious what this is. So I just want to pull this up real fast, and I'll weigh in with you my further thoughts about what Trump said tonight.
Fox News decides Donald Trump is president of the United States. We've got our republic back, folks.
Let's go.
There it is.
Everybody should remember this moment. Look, I'm gonna echo Charlie from earlier. Remember where you were when this happened. Remember where you were when you realized that the Uniparty and all of these, just the establishment, you said it's time to actually participate. And look what you guys have done.
And if anyone deserves to get tears in his eyes, it's Charlie. I think we all agree.
I think Erica was chopping some onions or something in the break room.
No one has worked harder than Charlie for this.
We gotta hear some words here from you, Charlie. You put all this together, my man. Let's hear it.
I am just humbled by God. It's all God. It's all God. God alone. God alone. Decision desk has it. Pennsylvania. It's beginning.
Sorry. Wow. I was ready for that one. Wow. So, yeah, as I said, he, you can just, anyone who met him can just, you could see how much, like his joy, first of all, like in his moments of joy that he's thanking God. It really tells you everything you need to know. But you tell he's motivated by a hunger to make America a better place. Like he just wanted to make the world better. And I've gone through like a range of emotions where I was like feeling like anger. Like I understand that many people would be feeling anger. I get that. I get that. But like, I don't know. Maybe I sometimes joke that some people look at the world as as glass half full. Some look at it as half empty. And I really try to look at it not just as half full, but I can see there's clouds forming in the sky. It's probably going to rain soon. So perhaps it's, my pie in the sky optimism, which says that, maybe this can be something which there can be some genuine good that comes out of it if we have the fortitude to rise above an instinct for feelings of retribution and violence and actually try to like get back to a place where this country is not about one side feeling like the other side is evil and the other side feeling that each side thinking that the other is pure evil, but more get back to what Charlie was so dedicated towards trying to inspire, which was genuine debate without it being about who's saying the words and being rather than the power of a concept of an argument of looking at facts and logic together. And if we can even start returning to that, I think that's a way of really honoring his memory.